Welcome back to this episode of
All Four.
Yeah, boy.
Where we talk about things.
Welcome, Wolfgang.
Wolfgang.
Squeeze.
Squeeze.
Yes,
What the heck?
Okay. Anyway, so this episode we're going to be talking about replayability. Save me.
Replayability in video games.
Yeah, that.
Oh.
But of course, before we get to the main event, we always want to talk about what we've been playing recently and give some brief thoughts on that.
Right.
Anyone want to start?
I've been playing Elden Ring.
Oh, wow. Late to the party.
Yeah, I'm a little late. I don't know that much. I'm 10 hours in, and I haven't left the first area. It's very...
Holy.
Yeah, it's a very good game. There's so much to explore in that game.
Wait, you've played it 10 hours already?
Yeah.
And you're in the first area?
Yeah, dude. I don't know. I'm really scared to fight Godfrey. I've, beaten, 5 bosses, but, I'm still scared. I don't know. I'm nervous.
Dude, that's why I'm terrified to play Elden Ring. I feel like my life will just be sapped from my,
Hey,
lungs.
It's worth
It
it,
will
man.
if you let it. It will.
It's worth it. It's so much fun.
It is fun.
I'm going with, sort of battle mage, going, physical defense,
Yeah,
magic
yeah.
offense. I'm doing range. Right now I'm trying to up my dexterity so I can get a really good bow that I have. Anyway.
Wait, a really good bow or bow?
Bow.
Bow.
Like a weapon?
I hope there's not boats.
Like a boat?
Not a boat.
You on a boat?
I need
I'm not
dexterity
on a boat.
to use a boat.
I'm not in a boat.
Alright, Elden Ring? That's pretty good,
That's
man.
pretty solid.
Good, Yeah.
Solid.
I respect it.
Yeah.
So I know Gabriel's been playing half a dozen different things, it
All right.
feels like. He's been playing a lot of new stuff. So.
Oh, he's branching out? Okay,
Yeah,
we'll pick something you really liked that you played.
Undertale.
Oh, wow. Also late to the party, but tell us about Undertale.
I feel like everyone already knows everything at this point. But that I've gotten all 3 endings, including the genocide ending, which
Brave.
is has the hardest boss in gaming. It's so stupidly hard.
Yeah, Gabe beat Sans.
Sans is Ness. Or Ness is Sans. What was it?
Ness is Sans.
Yeah,
that was that
we
one game
rewatched
theory. I
that
showed
theory.
it to him too.
Yeah, I was like, that actually makes
He
sense.
wanted to watch it, and I'm trying to convince him to play Earthbound next.
Yeah, because
As you should. That game's good.
They seem very similar, with that it seems like it has the same humor as Undertale does.
Oh, yeah. Earthbound's a good game. Highly recommend it.
The characters in Undertale, really good. They're just really good. Just play the game if you have.
I played an hour of it and never went back.
Yeah, because he doesn't like good.
Gunnar is our representative hot takes brother.
Your takes are mid.
Gunnar has a lot of hot takes.
Here, I'll explain. The reason is because I'd already heard so much about it and I've known everything about it.
Yeah.
That's why I pretty much very disliked Odyssey. I didn't enjoy it at all because I had seen everything and heard everything that was in the game.
Super Mario Odyssey.
Assassin's
If you
Creed
hear
Odyssey.
everything about a game and you hear about all the endings and everything that
Yeah.
has to do with it, you've seen it.
I didn't.
It kind of messes it.
That
up.
makes sense. I actually really tried hard to avoid all of the Undertale stuff when it was big. So when I played it for the first time, I didn't really know anything about it. But I would understand if you know what's going on, it kind of makes it.
That's
one play it.
That's the good thing about Elden Ring. You could watch a whole playthrough of someone playing it, and you would still find 50% of just stuff you didn't see in that video.
Hey, save it for the main event of the replayability.
Yeah.
That's a good
Oh,
point.
good point. Good point.
All right.
All right. Let me say my thing then. So I did finish Shin Megami Tensei 5, which was my first Shin Megami Tensei game, and it was really amazing,
Shin Megami?
awesome. Yeah, dude, it was so awesome.
Shimigami.
I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But that's been a little while now. I already made a video on Engage about it, which I sent it to you. Did you see how many views it was at?
No, I didn't. I hadn't had a chance.
As of right now, it was at 750 some,
Wow.
which was crazy. That's top 10 videos that performance wise. So
Gage is about to be #1 trending in
No-
gaming.
number 1 on trending. Yeah, a lot of people were really positive about the video, so that was cool. But that's been a few weeks now, and so Right now, like literally like 10 minutes before we came down to record, I was playing Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
Oh, such a good game.
I've been playing it on NSO, and it's the definitive way to play it because you can play it on like the big screen, all that. There's just like, I did notice there's like a few weird things. I think it's with like the emulation, and I've never
Is it
heard.
like differences from the original?
It's not like changes that are intentional, but like occasionally you'll have like a break in the audio, and you'll hear it like snap, like for a split second, if like a sound cue is happening. Really subtle, really small. And then there's like a few other like things with like audio randomly bugging out. Like when you do the dash with the fire when Mario's standing behind Luigi,
Yeah.
and you hit someone, it'll keep playing the audio until you do something.
Oh, really?
else.
So like
Yeah.
like audio like glitches.
Yeah, there's a few audio glitches, but aside from that, it's amazing. I never beat it as a kid, but I do own it, and I literally still have the copy upstairs. So it's cool to finally be able to like run through it and play it.
So it's been fun. Like
It's been fun. Yeah. It was hard to get into at first. I was like, I feel like we're so spoiled nowadays with games because it's like, oh, it has to be 4K ray tracing, all this crazy
60
crap.
frames is a norm.
And it's like, yeah, that stuff's nice, but honestly, I'm trying to like experience a lot of the NSO games, like the older games, and just like put a lot of that outside of my mind and just enjoy put myself in the shoes of people at that time playing it,
That makes sense, dude. But tell me Luigi isn't the best character in
Dude,
that entire game.
the game is so funny. Like
Luigi
I'm
is the
constantly
best.
laughing.
Wait, what is it? Like what's the one scene I always think of when it's like, is it Prince Peasley?
Prince Peasley, and he's like sitting down next to him, like poking him because he wants the
He wants the badge, and he's like, "Oh, I only had one."
like,
Luigi's just like,
he's like, Luigi, you're gonna have to go buy one. It's like, oh man,
Luigi
Yeah.
gets shafted.
They constantly are beating up on him. It's so funny. The game is like, I'm constantly smiling through it. It's incredible. Like Alpha Dream dying off was so sad. Like that company did an amazing job.
Guys, F in the chat for Alpha Dream.
F in the chat.
F in the chat.
F in the chat.
F in the chat.
Dang, well that's a good one. Well, I guess that leaves me, and I'm gonna talk about two games really quickly because I played two games essentially like back to back really recently.
I mean, that was like me with SMT and Mario and Luigi.
So I played last time we talked about how I played Pikmin 1, the recently I guess remaster on Switch. Really, really enjoyed it. Super fun. I was like, man, this was like, I had such a good experience with that game. So I immediately jumped into the second one.
Right.
And, I found out in the Pikmin community, at least from what I've seen on the internet, that everyone, in the Pikmin community, their least favorite game is either 1 or 2. It's not 3.
Really?
It's not 3. 3 is never anyone's least favorite. It's either 1 or 2.
Dang.
So you're like a Pikmin 1 person or a Pikmin 2 person. Because everyone seems to like, in the Pikmin community, mostly like 3. And dude, like, I'm a Pikmin 1 guy. Pikmin 2 did not grab me. Like, the mechanics are more or less the exact same. It's just like the structure is very different. With the caves, I'm sure you've heard.
Yeah. Arlo's talked about that quite a bit.
Yes. The caves are just make it, the structure of the game very different. Very much more, I don't really know the right word. It's more like arcadey kind of thing. Like, maybe that's not the right word. Like, for the first one, it's very simple. Get all the parts, 30-day time limit.
And the game's over.
But you replay it, replayability, because you want to do less and less days. Like, become more efficient, right?
Right.
There's no time limit in Pikmin 2. Like, there's day limits, of course, like day, night, and then next day. But there's no day limit. You can take as many days as you want. But when you're in the caves, it's more like, okay, you bring a certain amount of Pikmin down, and, like, you have to get all the pieces. And if your Pikmin die, you can't grow any in the cave. So it's just like, I don't know. It didn't really work for me as much.
Aren't the caves supposed to like add replayability or something? I feel like I heard about that.
I mean, well, there's a ton of caves, and there's not all of them are like pretty much most of them are optional. Like you only need a certain amount of, like, you're paying off debt essentially, and each treasure's worth a certain amount of money. Once you pay off the debt, which is only half the treasures in the game, like you see credits, which I did. But then after that, I was like done. Like, even though there's another 10,000 Pokos worth of treasure, I was like, I'm not vibing with this.
You just bailed out.
Yeah, so, I mean, Pikmin 2, I respect it, and it is a good game, and people love that game. There are people who prefer it over the first, but I'm not that guy. And then really quickly, the other thing, I recently went back and played Mega Man 9 just because I wanted to. Because I was,
Interesting.
Really random. I was just really craving a Mega Man game. I was like, let's play the Mega Man game. And everyone had said 9 was like really, really good. And I've played all the numbered games. But like I played them all like consecutively, so they kind of ran together near the end where I was just like, Mega Man. So I went back and played 9. Fantastic game. Honestly, probably like top 3 Mega Man games up there. And my personal favorites is with like 11 and 2. So
Dang.
I'm gonna be honest. I think Mega Man's mid.
Why are we
Save
you
it.
around?
Dude,
Like,
next episode
Literally-
literally next episode needs to be the gaming hot takes video.
Gunnar, you just need to keep a running list of all the
I feel
Yeah, we need to like write
poopy
this
things
down.
you say.
I feel like you play one Mega Man game, you've played them all. You don't need to play another one. They're very.
But they're new abilities, right?
They're,
Like
they're
new
very
levels.
similar.
They are very similar, but they're still fun.
Yeah, but like they should have built on things and made things better.
Gunnar, stop being controversial. Anyways, let's get into the real part of this
Save it.
episode.
Yeah, let's dive in. Let's
All
do
right,
this.
so replayability. What makes games replayable? I'm gonna die. What makes
Die.
games replayable to
I'm gonna die.
what games are replayable to you? What makes games replayable? What makes you not want to replay them? Like, give it to me, guys. What do you think?
All right, look. First thing I'm gonna say right off the bat: Peter Jackson's King Kong official game of the movie
Oh
is one of the most replayable games.
We'll never go an episode without games like the obligatory Peter Jackson King Kong video game.
I'm like saying it super fast, just knock it out, dude. But seriously though, like I went back and played it like a year ago, maybe within the year, something like that. It wasn't too long ago, and I was like scared. I was so scared to play it because I was like, please, I don't want to like dislike this game. I didn't want to
Going back to like that Raz
that
video.
Rasputin video where he talked about that when you go back to a game, you haven't played it forever and you have the nostalgia goggles on, and when you play it, you're like, dang, this sucks. I was so scared.
But
I was so scared of that happening here, but no, dude, literally I enjoyed it so much, and I sort of almost tried to like speed run it. Like y'all remember that?
I do remember that phase.
I did do the Peter Jackson. I beat it in like 3 hours, which it's like a 6 to 8 hour game, something like
It's
that.
faster than I could beat that game.
Yeah, it was fun, but yeah, replaying it this time, non-speed running it, it's just solid. Like it's a linear game, like very linear. Like there's no exploration at all, but somehow it just works. And I feel like that contributes to its replayability. It's just like, here's what's fun,
So
you know?
you're saying what makes that game replayable to you is not only are the mechanics pretty solid, but the fact that it's kind of a shorter-ish game and that it's like linear.
Right. Yeah. And what it tries to do, it does so well because it's immersive. There's no HUD. You have to like call out how many like shots, like ammo you have, and it's almost like a survival horror game. And just everything that it does,
Got the peanut gallery over
it
there.
just does so well. It's just
a
fun.
survival horror game. Trust me.
It
trust
is.
me.
It genuinely
not a
is. It
survival
has
horror
those
game.
mechanics.
You compare that to Evil Within, Resident Evil 7 and 8.
Peter
Yeah.
Jackson King Kong.
Yeah, Peter Jackson.
Like I just severely doubt that. Like, is there
It
like
has those mechanics.
is there like item collection and like item like
Inventory management.
inventory
Yes.
management?
Yeah, there is.
Is there even an inventory in the game?
It's not on the same level of like you have to manage a ton of different items.
No, it's 2 magazines on backup.
2 magazines on backup, but you
Oh, I'm dry.
You are keeping track of like what gun do I have, how much ammo, do I have a spear, what spears are around. It's just a different way of doing it. So it's not cookie cutter at all, but it is definitely in the same vein as a survival horror. At least has those mechanics.
Okay, I can maybe agree with that. Just I would not call it a survival horror like all the way. Maybe it has certain mechanics, but like it's so like light on the survival horror in it, and I don't think it's
game.
I don't think it's scary.
But
Hey, wait a minute. the Brontosaurus chapter.
Brontosaurus
is
is
not-
terrifying.
Not scary.
Oh,
Okay.
dude.
I guarantee you when the creators were making it, they weren't trying to make a scary game or like a horror game.
I bet they were.
I bet they were trying to make it scary. Maybe not a horror game, but
Don't
it was
like,
scary.
It's
It is creepy.
but I definitely don't think it's a survival horror. Oh my goodness. The heat's getting to us. It's getting to us.
Dude, yeah. By the way, we're in like kind of a heat wave right now, so
it's hot as heck.
It's pretty mid outside.
Save it for the hot takes. Save it for the hot takes.
Yeah, because it's hot.
But yeah,
outside.
so that's like an example of survival horror. But really, with this episode, we're trying to like go into more than just saying, oh, here's a game that I find replayable. We're saying like, all right, what about that game is replayable? And then like throwing that out.
So do you mostly find that you replay linear games the most?
Absolutely. And that's something that I think open world games just out the gate struggle with. Like,
Gunnar looks like he's disagreeing.
disagreeing. Gunnar, what do you say?
What are you saying? What do you think?
What are you saying?
What are you saying to
Good
this?
open world games are some of the most replayable.
Oh,
games.
all right. Tell me why.
Most replayable. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, especially like open worlds and open areas. This is kind of like segueing into what I was going to talk about.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I think like, I don't think like super like linear games are. I don't think they're very replayable. Like something like a Call of Duty campaign for you can like play it like a few times, but it is going to get boring. It is going to start getting boring, in my opinion. In my opinion.
Don't fight me.
I think the most replayable game I've ever played in my life also happens to be my favorite game of all time.
Here we go.
Hitman.
Hitman, bro.
Okay, so
I-
what? All right, so what about it makes it replayable?
Yeah. Tell me.
IOI Hitman. I haven't played Blood Money or the other ones. I haven't played the old ones.
Alan, please add details.
You remember?
What makes it so replayable, and I'm like level 380. I'm really, yeah.
In the battle pass?
Yeah, I've put like so many hours in that game. It's crazy.
Just so many hours I can't count.
And what makes it so replayable is the options.
Mm.
And that is one of my favorite things. One of my favorite little like nitpicks with video games is just interactability with the world. I don't know why. It's just a thing I usually always enjoy. That's something I really liked about Fallout. You know, you can pick up anything, you can hold anything, you can throw anything, you know, all sorts of little just random stuff you can pick up. And I like that. I like the little interactabilities with the world. Hitman does that very well.
Because you never really had the same experience twice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, like, the level creation and the levels in Hitman are the most amazing thing I've ever seen in a video game. Like, literally, just by the fact that there's, like, 12, give or take, like, 12 levels in all three of the games. That just goes to show how open and insane they are. You can do anything in a Hitman game. And you can do it in anything.
Sorry.
So with that, Gunnar, it's an example of a game where it's the sandbox approach.
It's definitely like that. It's definitely a sandbox, and that's my type of game. You know, I enjoy it.
That makes sense because you also grew up with your favorite game being Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
The sandbox.
Sandbox game.
Yeah.
Minecraft.
Episode 1. See episode 1.
Yeah, and it's got. I will just say this real quick. It's got a pretty good story. You know, it's good enough. I really like the characters. The characters are good.
Nice.
So-
Okay.
So it's the gameplay more so than like running through the story.
Gunnar likes having
aspect.
different experiences every time.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And just like openness. I like openness and options in video games.
It's an option example.
That's why I really like Splinter Cell. Just throwing that.
Yeah. I agree. Gabriel, you seem like you have a lot to say.
Bit. What do you
Yes!
All right, what do you got,
Okay.
man?
I think the most replayable games are probably live service games.
Oh no!
EA's
Blasphemy.
brainwashed me.
Blasphemy.
You're ruining my Fortnite.
All right, explain.
Okay, obviously.
He like goes this long thing about like why battle passes and all that other stuff are good.
Well, obviously, live service games don't have a story mode at all, most of the time, at least. Live service games that try to fit in a story never work at all.
Yeah.
But
Wait, Doesn't Apex Legends have like a background story in every?
It's
season?
more like
Yeah,
lore
like,
than
yeah, it doesn't
story.
really
It's the same thing as Overwatch.
Yeah,
They
it's,
just
Like,
it's
it doesn't
lore.
work.
I'd call it lore. It's not really story.
Lore.
I don't know. There's a lot of reading in those games. All I'm
That's
saying.
what lore is.
Well, yeah.
But it's optional. There's
Do
not
you
like
know the law?
The lore.
there's not like a story mode or anything. It's totally optional.
Anyways,
Anyways.
Anyway,
I put 1,600 and some hours into Apex.
we need like
done
a
that
sound.
Sweating intensifies.
Yeah.
Sweating intense.
We need like a soundboard.
Because like,
I know.
because no round that you play in live service games are like never the same most of the time.
They try to get you to like replay it.
Yeah, that, and it mostly works for a lot of people that actually like playing the game. Like me with Apex, that game's just fun. I think it's really smooth and it's fun. I like it.
Wow, live service. That's so funny. We've gotten like 3 different opinions so far. Linear games.
Linear.
You got like
Sandbox.
open world sandbox games. You got live service games that go on forever.
Yeah, like-
Wait a
I will
minute.
say that-
Wait.
What?
You go first.
I'm gonna say one thing. There are only 2 good live service free games.
Whoa, first of all, that's a statement.
Hot take. Hot
At
take.
least on console.
Gunnar,
At
you're
least
gonna
on
get
console.
canceled from this podcast.
No, I just want to say this.
Save it for the hot takes.
No,
episode.
No, go ahead. Go
All
on.
right,
Go on.
what is got?
I'm
I'm
curious.
curious.
Apex Legends.
Okay.
It's grown on me. Apex Legends is a roller coaster of emotions. One day you love it, the next day it's trash, and then a month later you come back and you love it, and then you think it's trash. It's just up and down, up and down. Right now I'm in an up. I'm guaranteeing.
You're on a hill, not a valley.
I'm gonna go down at some point.
But I'm heading down.
But you can't really like.
Downward spiral.
Yeah, you can't. Like, if you're talking about live service, like free games, you gotta talk about Apex. It's probably one of the best ones. And number 2 is definitely Fortnite. As much as people, like,
No.
crap on it and, like,
No.
it's like, Fortnite, I think that's really stupid. I think it's a bandwagon thing. I don't like it. I think it's
Gunnar calling out half the internet.
yeah, like, literally, like,
Yeah.
it's a good game. If you actually play it, it is a good game.
Sure.
Full of
sure.
people who make the Empire
Got it.
State Building in 2 seconds with buildings.
Zero build mode, that's why they added it.
All right. So what I was gonna ask Gunnar is like your original statement was, I think open world games have the potential of being the most replayable. But like
Yeah.
Hitman, I wouldn't really call it open world.
It's like open
It's
area.
sandbox.
It's
But-
definitely a sandbox. So like
If I
is
was-
there an open world that you can think of that you like
Oh.
to replay?
Elden Ring.
No, all right,
I'm
yeah.
going to replay it. I
Yeah,
guarantee you.
Wow.
Elden Ring definitely. I do get that. That one probably is up there
Mhm.
with those that are most replayable.
Yeah.
Is that the only one that like comes to mind? Like for
I
you know,
have a
Phil?
few that comes to mind. That's the one I'm playing and I have played that I can remember.
Well, the funny thing is like I'm thinking to myself what
Yeah.
games are replayable to me,
Mhm.
and for the most part, like I've looked through some of my favorite games that I replay a lot,
Right.
and for the most part, I side with Gage on like more linear, like controlled, you know, short-ish. Most of the time, it's shorter games. Like that's what
Right.
I see. Like that's why I like Mega Man games. That's more like classic Sonic games, even modern Sonic games. I mean, no Sonic game is really that long.
Right.
06 in the corner.
Yeah, that was a little different.
But yeah, even like Resident Evil games, like,
Right.
you know, 10 to 12 hours, that's short-ish. So like that's where I fall into most of the time. However,
Mhm.
there are games like, there's like outliers for me. So for
Right.
me, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker,
Yeah.
that's one of those games that I always feel like I can come back to and replay it, even though it's an open world. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely an order to doing certain things, but there's so many optional like islands and places to sail and
Right.
like different items you can get and all that stuff. And so like I think to myself like why do I feel that way about Wind Waker
Right.
over
What,
other stuff?
right. What about it? Have you figured it out?
I think there is something to be said about making an open world compelling
Mhm.
and not like you're constantly doing busy work,
Mm.
right?
It always feels like
Right?
it progresses.
So, what do you
I
what are you
do
gonna
want to say 2 things. Is that I just thought of this. I think really any game to any certain person can be replayable, like no matter what it is.
Mhm.
I will say that, like, if it's your favorite game of all time, it's going to be replayable. But what else I wanted to say was I just wanted to bring up 2 games: Far Cry and Just Cause. Those are 2 really good games.
Again, sandbox. Like,
yeah.
Like Just Cause, like people play literally because of the sandbox aspects.
Right. So that's not really like replaying in the traditional sense that we're talking about. That's more so like, oh, let me jump in. That's like me in Breakpoint. Like Ghost Recon Breakpoint story mode sucks, and I never want to go through that again. It was horrible.
I remember, I remember we after we finished it the first time, we tried to do it the second time, didn't make it past first.
It sucks.
Wow.
It's horrid.
Wow.
It is not Ghost Recon at all. But I still
groceries I recon. Sorry.
But the game itself is so fun to jump into. So that's what I do. Like, I don't say I go back and replay it all the time. I just go in to mess around in the world and shoot.
I mean,
dudes.
like,
It's like I feel like that. I don't know. I consider
it's a different kind of replayability.
Yeah,
it's definitely.
But
a
like,
different
I feel like it should count because you are replaying a game. You are just playing a game.
Right. Yeah. I just think that like there's sort of a distinction with it. It's definitely still like it's good enough for you to dump in that much time into it. You know.
Like what you're saying is it's like there's a difference between replaying a game in like a story sort of sense, like in a linear story.
Like to see the credits.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Or in just like mess around.
What I will say too is I almost feel like it's better / more impressive if a game that isn't like that, where you do play it for the credits, where it can get you to keep coming back. And I know that's how Resident Evil 4 is for you, Gav.
Yeah, I thought about that game. That game's actually long. That's like a 20-hour
right,
game.
Yeah, that's not very short.
Over 20 hours. But I'll still play that like at least every year or every other year. Like I'll play through that entire game.
Right. And see, a lot of times what we do is we put on a game like Breakpoint or Apex or whatever it is, not to see credits, but we just play it to do something. And that's not necessarily bad. It can be a lot of fun. But I do think there's something really impressive about a game like Resident Evil 4 for you, where you know how much of a commitment it is, and you know how many times you've played through it, but you're like, I still want to play it.
I think, again, that comes back to, like, compelling world and, like, just fun, straight up fun factor mechanics, right? Like, it's just fun. Like, it's almost the same for Doom Eternal. Like, it's longer-ish. I mean, with me knowing how to play through it, like, it's probably like a 10-hour game, maybe 10 to 15.
Right.
But like that's still, well, with the DLC, I guess it's maybe an hour or two longer. But that's still one of those games I just like, man, so fun. Like the mechanics in that game are just so good that it always makes me like, when I think about it, I could play through that game.
Like,
right.
I feel like Doom is just like, literally, this isn't bad, but I'm saying, I feel like Doom's like it's like a sandbox area, and then you move on, and then little sandbox areas, it's very, you can just focus on the gameplay.
It's linear, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not open world and by any stretch of the imagination. Now, it's like open-ended, meaning that you can like, if you're at the end, you can actually go back through the entire level you just played through, and actually you can fast travel to different like warp points throughout the level once you get to the end. So like you can go back and explore, and there's secrets to be found, and they're actually worth finding because you can find some pretty cool stuff.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, it's a very, just like Gunnar was saying, like very mechanics-driven game.
It's all about the fun.
And it always has been up until like probably Eternal, where they kind of put the story like more important. I happen to love it, so it's fine. But yeah, no, there are games that are just like way more like mechanically driven than others.
That's a good point. And see, that's why we're slow to say it's the story necessarily, because even in the case of King Kong, like, it's just the story of the movie, basically. Yeah. But for me, it's how fun that is and how unique I find it. So it's like the Doom Eternal or Doom idea. It's like I play it for the credits because there is credits to get to. It's linear to that point. But I think it's just like in that spot where it's not necessarily the story, but it is for the credits ultimately.
I think most games, like most, are not replayable for the story. I think there are a few, such as Telltale games, and like choice-based games in general.
Yeah. Well, alternate endings.
Alternate endings. Like a certain game called Detroit Become Human, one of the greatest video game stories I've ever seen. Holy crap!
Has Gunnar ever played Detroit Become Human?
No.
He watched some.
I watched it. It was like, it's good enough to be a movie, dude. That game is insane.
Well, speaking of endings, I know Gabriel has a lot to say about that because you were just talking about Undertale.
Yeah.
So like, throw your bit into all this. Like, we were just talking about what about multiple endings, because that's like your favorite. That's like one of your favorite ways to replay games.
Yeah. Is that why you played through it 3 different times just to see all the endings?
I play it way more than that. I've probably gotten to about 20 playthroughs.
Oh.
He's had this game for like a week.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And
You scared.
I looked at how much time I put in. It says 50 hours or more.
What?
I know, I didn't believe it.
What?
Yeah, so
I'm scared.
And like Security Breach, I got all 6 endings of the game. Super cool. All the
Right,
endings are
right.
super good. Anyways, but like that's one of my favorite ways to replay games because like they'll hint at like you can get this ending like, and I just have to do it. Literally, I cannot put down a game with multiple endings until I get every single ending.
Now, speaking of which, that reminds me. So, like, there are certain things that games will add in that make me want to replay it. Alternate endings, it can sometimes do it for me if I was really invested in the story or the game itself and like, okay, cool, let me replay and get that other ending. One thing that almost always hooks me, New Game Plus.
Oh,
yeah.
it's asking for it.
New Game Plus. Dude,
Oh, yeah.
if even if the game that I just played is like halfway decent, if you put in a New Game Plus that's like worth anything, I'm almost always just gonna play it, like, or at
Yeah.
least try it, because like New Game Plus is such a good idea. You know,
Right.
like you get through a game, especially the game with like upgrades or like different weapon types or different builds, whatever, and they're like, okay, well you get to keep all that stuff and play through again, and that's just like, dude, let's go, let's go.
You talk about that with the Dead Space remake.
Dead Space remake had a New Game Plus. I beat that game. It was like I don't know how many hours, maybe pushing 20. Immediately jumped right back in. New Game Plus. I was like, yep, I'm in.
I'm in. It was
Really
just that
solid.
good.
Right after the credits, New Game Plus. Same thing with Resident Evil 4 remake. I played through that game. Of course, that game's fantastic by itself. It didn't need a New Game Plus to be good, but it obviously has one. And I was like, no. And the credits, New Game Plus. Played through.
Going back in.
Another 15 hours.
Yeah.
So
Dang.
I think New Game Plus is one of those things that is just like, for me personally, like really hooks me. Like it gets
Right.
me to play a game again.
Oh, but you
Yeah.
know, it always sucks when you're hoping for a New Game Plus and it doesn't have one. That
Yep.
that
You
happened.
just replay it.
Yeah, that happened to me with a game called Death Loop, that made by the gods of game creation, Arcane, ignoring Redfall. Amazing.
Hmm.
Anyway, that game, one of my favorite games, literally combines like 2 of my favorite genres, FPS and roguelite. Amazing game, amazing story, amazing voice acting. And there's something to be said about replayability with that game. It almost seemed like they didn't add a New Game Plus because just like they didn't really need it just because the way the game was made. I kind of still wish there was New Game Plus, but I still think it works just in the style of game that it is, and you can just like keep playing the game even after you beat it. I think that game does replayability pretty well. You can just like jump.
Well, with roguelike and even roguelites, you know, that's kind of the whole gimmick is like Gunner seems to like games where you play through and you don't get the same experience every time. Like that's the trend
jam.
that I'm seeing with Gunner, because that's what roguelites are all about. Like you literally play through and you never experience the same thing.
Yeah.
You get different upgrades, different weapons, different areas, different like spawning enemies and stuff.
It's like you're in the same like general place, but every single time you have like different weapons, different enemies in different areas.
See, the funny thing is roguelikes never really grabbed me like that.
Oh.
Like
Right.
Oh.
I'm not into them. The only one that I can think of that I ever played was Hades. Right? And it was just because the buzz around that game was huge, and it got nominated for Game of the Year, and it was an indie game. So I was like, okay, maybe this game's good.
Right.
And of course, I played through it, and I like got through to the end, quote unquote, for the first time, and it took me a while, like probably upwards of 10 to 15 hours.
I remember that.
And I think I've shared this before, where I was like, okay, like end, and then like it didn't really end, and
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like I just spent all of this time getting to the end, and it was really hard.
That's-
and that final boss was hard. So then I looked it up, and it's like, oh yeah, to get the true ending, you have to get to the end 9 times, and I was like,
Oh.
no.
That's like Undertale. If you beat it, you get like for the first time you get such a bland Undertale. It's the end. It's very like
It's definitely like not the real ending. So
Yeah.
like with roguelikes, you know, I get it. I get the appeal. It's not usually my cup of tea though. Is my thing.
I want to throw out another thing here. It kind of goes back to the open world debate a little bit, but it's series that started linear and decided to jump to open world. And
I know what you're
that's a
talking about.
great comparison point because you look at something like Halo.
Yeah,
I can go back and I can replay any Halo game -5 just because I don't like 5 that much.
Get out of here.
I can even replay 4, and 4 is definitely not my favorite, but
I like 4.
I can replay them, especially the Bungie made games. However, with Infinite, as much as I did have a lot of fun and enjoyed that game, I don't find it replayable. Like it just doesn't. It has too much fluff. I feel like
Too much busy work.
Busy work. Because when I jump into Halo 1 through 3, I know it's going to be fun, and I replay those games all the time. Like I've dumped so much time into them. I know it's going to happen. You know, it's very linear for sure. Although there are certain open areas, it's still you're going in one direction. But then when you jump over to Infinite with like collectibles, and then there's downtime in between like actual missions that are in the game,
Right.
it ends up feeling kind of bloated. And when the story isn't there like it was in the original games, it's kind of a hard sell for me.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about the elephant in the room, The Legend of Zelda.
Oh,
All right. What do you want?
I just want to say something real quick.
What do you want?
Halo Infinite is a horrible game. I think it's horrid. I think Gage thinks.
Did
Give me
I
hot
really
takes.
stop talking for you to talk?
I just wanted to say one thing is that
You should have kept talking, Gavin.
in a game like Elden Ring
Oh,
and
boy.
like maybe RDR2 from what I've heard, those games make exploring fun because you know you can find things. In Halo Infinite, if you explore in that game, you'll find 1 out of 100 collectibles. And that's about it.
And that's all it is. That is a kind of a fair point. Let's not get too bloated because I do want to hear what Gavin was talking about.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying because there's just basic collectibles you can grab, or there's like, oh, this lady.
This is a boss battle.
Right, yeah, in Elden Ring, yeah, or in RDR, like, oh, this horse fell on this lady. Let me save her and bring her back to town. You know, like there's random cool things like that aren't. It's more satisfying because you get a reward for doing it in game. But the reward is also just, oh wow, they made that, you know?
And it feels way less lazy. Like, it feels so lazy when they just, like, pop around, like, a million
things.
collectibles.
It's the checklist approach, which is why Infinite and most Ubisoft games don't jive with me, and I actually kind of hate playing them most of the time because of that. But anyways, let's throw it back to Gavin. I want to hear what you're saying.
Leading all back to
Legend of
The
Zelda.
Legend of Zelda.
Yes.
So started off linear. We all know. Now we had Ocarina of Time. You know, a little bit open world, open-ended. I'll say. You know, like that. Back in the day, felt like an open world for everyone.
Yeah.
Like there had never been such a big game.
It was definitely
world.
the precursor.
But you know, but Zelda games are more or less linear-ish.
Yeah,
you know, for the most part. Breath of the Wild changed the gaming landscape. Why do you think that all these game companies were trying to go open world? It is because The Legend of Zelda did it in such a way, like I said earlier, compelling world. No markers, no objective markers.
Yeah.
No objective markers. You can player choice. You could go straight to the end if you wanted to. Everything that you wanted to do was up to you.
Right.
And when you wanted to fight the boss, you could fight the boss. The map was extremely well made. There's stuff behind every corner. But again, it's like, it's not, I have to do all of these things, or it's not overloading you, like sensory overload. Here's all the markers on the map. Here's these kind of collectibles. Here's these kind of side quests. Here's these kind of towns. And here's these bosses. And it's like, that is too much, you know?
Right.
Like when I played, wow, this is a throwback. I didn't think I'd talk about this. Xenoblade Chronicles X.
Oh man, that was a while ago.
Wow, I'm old. Yeah,
That's not on Switch.
the game.
Who let him in?
I thought the game was good, but it was, for me, it was too much. Because that was the kind of game where you play through like the opening prologue kind of section, you know, that a lot of games have. And then the game opens up. And once it did, it just bombards you with, you can do literally everything in this game right now. And I was like, and I literally, right then and there, I just put it down. I was like, this is too much for me. It's not my kind of game. Like, it overloaded me.
Right.
Legend of Zelda, if everything in that game was marked on the map, it wouldn't have been as successful.
It wouldn't.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. It's the fact that, like, you go at your own pace, and there is, like, meaningful secrets to find in the world.
It's true.
I find it really interesting how with the shrines, if Zelda wasn't trying to be like crazy good, if it was trying to be like other game companies, they could have just made those like shrines like random collectibles would have been like it.
True.
They could have just done that, but no. Every time you find a shrine, you find a puzzle.
A mini dungeon.
A mini dungeon.
Right, essentially.
Which is in a way similar to the good design in open worlds. It's definitely similar.
Well, it set the standard. I think that's why like RDR2 and like Elden Ring are as good as they are. Like I think they took some pro tips from Zelda.
They might have. I think they came out kind of close, but I do know that Red Dead was a year after Breath of the Wild. So like, there's definitely some level of it there.
Mm-hmm. And like, dude, I swear I've seen so many games with like the 4-corner thing you gotta do to get to the one main thing.
Yeah.
I've seen that so many times. It's insane.
Especially in Ubisoft games.
Yeah,
Ubisoft.
and it's weird because like Far Cry 5 kind of had it. It was a bit more different. But Biomutant, I'm gonna say it here.
I beat it.
I didn't like it. I think it sucked.
I think a lot of people didn't like that game.
Yeah, it was literally Zelda. 4-corner things you had to like do, and then the main center thing. And it was
I see what you're saying.
It's
wow.
It's a 20-hour game, and I beat it.
But with Breath of the Wild, replaying it, I honestly, personally, probably wouldn't do it. I would play it and maybe like goof off and get some collectibles here and there. Go for the Koroks, which is basically that game's version of collectibles.
Right. Of course, all optional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is difficult because there's so many. Like there's way too many Koroks, which is fun to find.
900 something.
It's something like that's ridiculous. But like it's like a moment of fun when you find one. But I don't know. I feel like I don't know how much time exactly I put into it, but I put in like probably a little over 100 hours maybe. And I personally would not find myself replaying it, but I would see myself replaying Ocarina of Time. And I think
because it's a little bit more linear.
I think it was a little bit more of a controlled environment. Which,
right.
Again, I think that's the biggest thing. It's the open world, the open games versus linear. And it's not even just saying it like that. I think it's also just a controlled experience versus an open one.
Right.
Because in an open one, Elden Ring, Breath of the Wild, even Ghost Recon Breakpoint, like anything that's like is exactly an open world. Like, that's what it's going for. I don't think I could replay just about any of them. Like I can't think of any that I would replay. Like start from the scratch, do the whole thing again. I really can't think of any unless there was another like extra reason why I would do it, like playing Breakpoint again with you. But obviously that didn't pan out.
Do not agree.
But here's the thing.
Not
It's
compute,
the beauty of it is that a controlled environment game is specifically designed to be fun. It's like, Resident Evil 4, Peter Jackson's King Kong, old school Halo games. Like, they knew what you were going to do. And so they have level design. Like, that's the one thing you miss in open world is there is no level design.
It's way more intentional in linear games. Like the experience is tailored to what the game designers wanted you to experience,
which isn't bad.
Which no, for sure. And it's like that is the intended experience. Whereas an open world game, like who knows how long you're going to spend goofing around in the open world or getting lost or whatever. Which people like, but again, it's not like as honed in and focused as those games can be.
Which I think is why I personally find myself not a fan of replaying open world games, is because usually they're extremely long. Red Dead 2 was like over 60, and Breakpoint was probably somewhere around that too. I'm not too sure, but they're super long, and I just feel like there's no point replaying because I'm like, I might find a few different things, but I could find it even right here after I beat it. Now, in the case of Red Dead 2, that's an example of a game I would replay for the story because that story was so good. So there is some level of that too. Like if a story is genuinely that good, then here in a few years, I could totally see myself going back and playing through that story.
So here's
you say.
I was about to say, Gunnar, if you interrupt me with some stupid point again.
Another hot take.
I'm sorry.
But one thing I really wanted to ask, I think this is a very interesting question as well that goes along with it, is what is a game that you really liked that you feel you can't replay the same anymore?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. I literally thought of Subnautica earlier, and I was like, dang, how am I going to bring this up? That is literally my top 10 favorite games of all time, purely based on the first time I played it. I've gone back and played it again, and I've never gotten into it. I might have even tried a few different times because I ended up like losing all my freaking like files and crap when I got the Series X a while ago. That's a game I don't think I'll ever be able to, unless I'm like an old man and I never played it again. Like I might be able to go back then. But the problem with Subnautica is you have to go in blind. And if you know where things are, the illusion of the world, the open world, breaks apart. It's a smaller world. It's more depth than wide, but there is some level of predictability. Like there are specific spots where certain creatures do hang out, and they go in basically circles. Like they just hang out in one area. Like there's specific points where I know the Reapers are at, and I know to avoid it. And that kind of takes something away, because when I originally played the game, I was like, crap, I don't know what's out here. You know, I was freaking out. I was scared to do anything in the game. And that illusion builds the experience that you should have when you play it.
Right. Yeah, that's what kind of ruined it for me, because I'd watched you play it like a good amount, so I could never really I never really had any compelling feeling to play it.
Something that would have really fixed it is if they could make it to where any of the creatures could go anywhere on the map.
Yes.
Make it a little bit more random.
At least in their own biome, because that makes sense. Like a certain creature is going to live in a certain biome. But as long as they could actually move in there, 100% agree. Like that would totally fix a lot.
I never thought about that.
That would make the game way better, because they do hang out in one spot basically. Like there's spots that I know not to go to. It's set, right? Which is the first time you don't know that. Like you know, you're just discovering it. But that game is the number one. The only one I can think of off the top of my head that I just don't think I'll ever be able to have the same experience with.
Yeah, that's really hard. I think for me, it's not necessarily that I couldn't, because I have replayed this game before, but I never, as you said, I never had that same experience as my first playthrough. Both Portal games, honestly. Portal and Portal 2, love those games to death. And I do replay them every now and then.
I might agree with you.
But it's like, once you know the solutions to all the puzzles in the game, it's more about like speed running almost. It's more like, how fast can I get through this game? Like, you know, and there is fun in that. That's why I like Sonic games, right?
But you don't have to solve it anymore.
Exactly. It's not about figuring it out. It's about getting through it quickly, so you're kind of speed running it, which again has its own fun. Especially Portal 2 has a fantastic story and is extremely well acted and like all that great stuff. Fantastic game. But like there's a part of me that misses like, oh man, like I remember when I was trying to figure this out and I'm thinking like it racking my brain, and then I felt like a super genius when I figured it out, and I was like, wow, like here we go. I'll never be able to experience that again.
Because you remember.
Unless they make a new one. So
curse these memories.
So, but that's the thing is like, again, it's not necessarily that I can't replay it, but I'll never have that same experience.
That's a good point, because it is a different experience overall.
Do you guys have anything like that?
You got something, Gunner?
I guess that makes sense with like puzzle games, like strictly puzzle games.
Exactly.
Once you solve it, you kind of solved it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. My favorite, pretty much all my favorite games are like pretty open. I mean, like Scarlet Nexus, probably not, just because there's like two whole different games in the one game.
So you could replay that whole side.
So and the gameplay is definitely good enough for you to just play it.
Is there anything you've played that like the experience? Not like you can't replay it, because like you physically can. You know, like I can physically replay Subnautica, but it's just not going to be the same, because it's too. I've broken it. I've understood the illusion now, and it's not the same.
I would say. Not that I can't replay this game, but I probably wouldn't get the same experience. Far Cry 5. Now, I do know that Gage is a big hater on Far Cry. He played the third one, said the gameplay sucked, and he only liked the story, which is insane to me.
No, gameplay's fine. It was the open world I didn't like.
He's in that, the gameplay.
That's a big part of it, but I didn't like that.
Yeah. Wow. I played 5. I really liked 5. But, like, most of like the story beats and like you get used to the map and you memorize stuff in the map, and the side missions are not replayable at all. I say that the side missions are like not replayable at all. You play them first time, they're good first time side missions, but not very good like second time. And like you kind of just like know everything that's gonna happen. And there's like a few things in the game that like feel like random. They're not. They're definitely not. They're definitely like, scripted. I can go back. You know, I feel like you can do that with any Far Cry game. I think that's impressive about those games where you can just go back. It's a game where you just mess around, shoot things, and blow things up. You know,
Right.
but I don't think I would get the same experience
In the story.
especially in the story, because that's one of the main driving points. I feel like for Far Cry games is Far Cry villains. They're supposed to be really good. I think Joseph Seed's a good villain. I don't know if people agree with that. I think he's a good one. But you definitely don't get the same experience because you kind of like, you know what's going to happen.
So that's like what we were talking about earlier. Like, you can play it, but you can't, like, replay it.
Yeah.
So I think the main things of coming down to replayability is, you know, obviously there's so much personal preference, but
That is true.
it comes down to things like mechanics, focus experience, sandbox experiences.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the roguelike situation
Oh, yeah.
where you get
Oh, yeah.
randomized stuff, different experience every time.
Amen.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
like, there's so much that goes into it. So with that, to kind of like get close to the end of this episode, I'd like to go around and talk about what our most replayed game is, or games that you always like, you find yourself going back to and just replaying it because you're just like, it's the game. It's like your comfort food game, you know?
Food,
you
yeah.
come in and you're just like, man, I just gotta play this game. So I'll start. For me, even though I play it, like I said about Resident Evil 4, I feel like I can always play it and play through it like pretty regularly. My most replayed game of all time is Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yeah.
It's short. The mechanics are fantastic. I know that game like the back of my hand, and that helps the experience because the better you know it, the faster you can get through, the more fun it is going fast, right?
Right.
So I find myself when I don't have anything to play, but I want to play something, or I just want to decompress and not think about it, I just play Sonic 2. I've got the Sonic Origins Plus collection now, so I can play Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I'm set. Sonic 2. I love Sonic 3. It's a little bit longer though, so I don't play it as much. Fantastic game, but Sonic 2 for me is my most replayed game.
Dang.
Just like from start to finish.
Gabriel, do you have a comfort food game? I don't want to go
come on.
next because it's been a minute since you've chimed in.
I think we all know.
Yeah, I think we all know it. It's Apex. Like,
What?
You're really an Apex
like,
fan.
If I don't have a game,
No way!
If I don't have a game to play, I just play that game. That game's really good. But if I had to do another one, it would probably be Undertale because the sheer amount of secrets in that game is there was way more than I thought there were.
Startling.
Literally, I found this room with a doll in it and you fight it. I don't know what it is. It's meant to be like a meme because it's Undertale's that game, that kind of game. But it's the game I put the most time into, the game I play the most is Apex.
Yeah.
That's valid.
Valid.
You know, I think we all know what I'm gonna say, but it's definitely Hitman.
What?
I mean, I'll play Hitman even if I have other games.
Oh, I know, bro. I walk in your room and you're always playing it.
Yeah, it's like literally like I'll be like I'm in the middle of doing like hardest difficulty no HUD run right now. I'm at the second game.
No hood.
Yeah,
No HUD run.
it's really difficult. Yeah, but like I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna hop into some Elden Ring. Yeah, I have this thing where I have a hard time like starting to play games. This is probably just me, but like I have this thing where I just need to like go to it. I just need but once I start playing, you know, I enjoy it and get way into it. But I just need to like go. I just need to start it.
It can be daunting.
Yeah, I don't know why I have that, but I'll just be like, all right, gotta hop in, you know, let's play some Elden Ring, baby, let's get it. And then I'll see Hitman 3, and I'll be like,
Me and the boys playing Elden Ring.
Boys.
you know, I'll just like, I'll see Elden Ring, I'll see Hitman, I'll be like, or I could listen to a podcast and play some Hitman 3. And it's like, oh. But definitely Hitman 3. There's nothing that could beat it, replayability. I could literally, I've memorized every level in that game to a T. It's so good. So good.
Yeah, no surprises there, Gunner.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Gage.
Halo trilogy.
Oh my goodness.
First of all, that's not one game.
Yeah.
Any of them, I don't care. You pick any.
Wow.
I'll say currently Halo 3 because that's the one I'm
That's
currently on.
like the
on
games
with.
you replay the most or find you can replay the most.
I wanted to say King Kong, which I could have said, but the reason why I say Halo is because it has split screen co-op. So like, there's just so many options as to how you you enjoy those games, especially with the MCC collection.
You won't catch me playing split screen co-op.
Dude. Yeah, so 100%.
Save it.
Save it. Next episode's gonna be hot takes. You watch. We're gonna do freaking gaming hot takes. But yeah, I definitely say this because there's so many options as to how you experience it, and you know, King Kong doesn't have that, but that would be probably like up there with it as well. It's like one of those two. So yeah, that'd definitely be my answer.
Nice. Well, I think we've had some good conversation about game replayability. Gotten a little deep.
Yeah, bro. This is a good conversation. I feel like there's like we could honestly do like a part 2 to this at some point. Like there's just so much to say.
There is, but I think we're coming up on time. So thank you all for listening in to this episode of All 4, where you can listen to anything. Okay, cut.
Bye. Dude, it's hot as heck.
It's so warm in here.
Dude, I'm sweating.
Dude, I'm just gonna open the store and
It's gonna be like a freezer.